Well, hello there, class, and welcome to the start of yet another week of PPSY 555. Reading through your questions from the LipTac 321 assignment from last week, first week of Unit 3, and some excellent questions. So I'm going to try and breeze through as much as I can, get to probably 3, 4, maybe even if I have time, 5 questions. So let's go. I'm going to start here at the very top of some questions that were asked. Some great ones were asked. Let me start here. It says, let's see. If a client states they are unhappy with their job, is our goal first to see if we can improve their job situation? Maybe the clients simply need skills to manage their stress or tools to aid them in their job rather than seeking out a new career path. This is a great question. And I don't know that our job is ever to, well, I shouldn't say ever. I don't know if our job is always to help somebody find a new job. I'll give you an example. When I have people come to me, they say, "Hey, Jeff, can you help me find a new job?" My initial response is no. And they go, "But aren't you a career counselor? Aren't you a career coach?" And I say, "I am. But what I'm not going to do is help you just find a new job simply because you think that's the solution, right? So if I only help you find a new job, then the chances of you being back here with me or someone like me in 6 to 12 months because you don't like that job either are quite high. So there's always, I think, always has to be more to the conversation, more to the working relationship than helping somebody simply find a new job. So I think this question here, this initial kind of train of thinking, if you will, is our goal to see if we can help them improve their current job situation. I would say, I think yes. I mean, in some respects, yes. And maybe not just the job situation, but maybe work with them to see if we can help them to kind of see things differently from a holistic standpoint. I've worked with clients and they thought that their issue was their job, but really there were many, many more layers to what was happening in their life. In fact, I took them through the career well-being, or the 5 elements of well-being assessment content, and realized that it wasn't necessarily their job that was something that they were kind of dreading, but there was just all of these elements as part of their overall life experience that were kind of dragging them down. And they came to realize after we worked together that in fact their job was actually they had a pretty good job, they had a pretty good situation for their workplace. They realized there was all these other extenuating circumstances that were actually within their control, and they ended up saying, I think I need to stay where I am. I need to realize the benefits of what I have, how good things actually are, and make some adjustments in some other areas. So much like we saw in well-being, if there's other areas of your life that are low, they will drag every other element down. And I would say similarly, in the same way, if you improve areas of life, the rest of your life overall will improve. And that's what we found with this client. So it's a great question. I think sometimes, and very rarely, I've worked with a number of clients, an increasing number of clients. Very rarely would I tell them, I think you need a new job. There has been one situation where I have explicitly stated those words. Out of years and years of doing this work, there's been one situation I said, I think you need a new job. And even in saying that, this individual, they continued to stay in their current job, and they will continue to stay in their current job so they can go to grad school. And they figured out a system that I'm gonna buckle down and get through, and then this is gonna pay my bills, and it's gonna give me time off to do the things I need to do. And then when I'm done with grad school, I'll move on and do something else. So great question, very good question. Here's another one for you. It says this. Let's see. I'm trying to think through all of these different things. As a future marriage and family therapist, we can relate and be empathetic to our clients' emotions using similar emotions or experience that we may have gone through in our lives to attune to them. I wonder if a career counselor has never entered the workforce, tried out different careers in his or her lives, how much life experience or seen the world, how can he or she relate to understand the client? And I would say, I don't know that they can really. I think one of the benefits of someone like many of you, someone like myself, having had a number of different jobs, having been in industry for so long, I am able to, and you are able to in different ways, increase our empathy, our ability to understand and see, kind of walk a mile in their shoes, if you will, to understand what it's like to be in the workplace, right? So oftentimes, those that go into the field of marriage and family therapy are people that your friends, your family are always coming to for advice. Maybe you have gone through some marital struggles and you've come out on the other end and you said, man, I want to do everything that I can to help other people not have to experience the challenges that I did and find help in the moment of what some might see as their greatest moment of despair. For instance, for myself, I've been in the workplace. I've been working and I went through a really hard season of underemployment. In comparison to what many people in this world experience, it was nothing. But for me, in the moment, it was very challenging. And when I was able to finally secure employment after applying for 217 jobs over the span of 9 months, I said to myself, I want to do everything I possibly can do to help other people, one, not to have to go through what I went through, and two, if they're in the middle of it, be able to help pull them out of those challenges. So can someone theoretically kind of offer up frameworks and different ways of thinking? Absolutely, right? You can give them theory, but there's a practical application that those who haven't been in the workforce or had multiple jobs simply can't speak to. So I think it's a balance, right? So if you're taking a class, for instance, whether it's in career counseling or in a marriage and family therapy course, or I studied leadership in some of my graduate education. I studied education in some of my education. I studied business and organizational development in some of my education. I want to take classes not from folks that just have this kind of theoretical understanding. I want to take classes from folks that have done things, right? That have led. I want to take classes from folks that have been in business, that have been entrepreneurs, that have run their own practices. I want to take classes from those that have taught, right? That have actually studied education, who have been in the classroom, who have done the hard work that a teacher, that a professor, that an instructor is called on to do. So yeah, I think we do need to have individuals that have experience. It's just going to, I think, be a more powerful way of working with our clients if we can relate based upon personal experiences. Excellent question. And again, everybody has an expertise and something to offer, but I would offer up that I think the more experience or the differing experiences that you do bring to the table, I think it's just going to help you in your ability to relate to your clients in ways that someone who doesn't have those experiences can't do. Doesn't mean they can't offer advice. I think they can offer great theoretical advice, but their practical application that they're pulling from, they don't always have as much as perhaps would be beneficial to help the client with whom they're working. So that's a great question. Here's another one. I think this is it's a good kind of straightforward, simple question. Is it more important for the counselor or the client to define what a career means? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that if we're talking about career coaching, I don't know that we're necessarily helping to frame or shape the way the client thinks about, or at least telling them, defining them what things should be or how they should be thought of or approached. I think we should be in a position where we help them to figure that out. So asking questions. I would say in this instance, the question that's being asked, I think it's probably more important for the client to define what a career means to them, because then they're going to be pursuing jobs, vocational kind of identity components that are going to fit within that framework, within the definition that they've offered up that said, this is how I define a career, and this is what I want my career to look like. So if I offer up and I say, hey, I think this is what a career looks like, then I'm framing an experience for somebody else, if that makes sense, that they may not want to then kind of live into or adhere to because it's not something that they've been able to come up with. I think the power in career counseling, the power in career coaching is, and my approach is this anyway, where I ask a lot of questions. I pull out information as opposed to stuffing in information. I come from the mindset and the understanding that there's a lot in you, and I'm going to ask specific questions to kind of pull that information out of you so that you can then kind of catch yourself being yourself and think through things on your terms. So I hope that makes sense. It's a great question. I think you can give them some frameworks, right? I think you can give them some different ways of thinking about things. You can talk, if it's a younger individual, you can talk with them about the fact that, historically, if you look at the previous generations, like I think of folks like my dad, who's now retired, he was in the same field for 34 years. And for the last 33 of those 34 years, so all but his first year, he was at the same organization, right? He was working for the same county entity for 33 of his 34 years. And he obviously he moved up, but he was still in the same organization for those 33 years and in the same field for those 34. That's just simply not the case anymore. Or I shouldn't say it's rarely the case. I was at Azusa Pacific University full-time for 12 and a half years, which is longer than I anticipated. In fact, it's 11 years longer than I anticipated. And it was a great experience for me, but even that is long in comparison to what we're seeing now, especially with a younger generation that's up and coming, where they're staying at current jobs for maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 years max, and they're moving on. So their career definition is very different. They're going to have multiple different careers over the span of their lifetime. And so it's helpful for us to kind of hear some frameworks, some ways to think about things. But I want to know what it is that you, the client, think about this so that I can help to kind of not point you in the right direction, but ask questions to help you steer you and making sure that you are thinking through your approach to your career. And then we can kind of work together to figure out what those next steps look like. So excellent question. Thank you. Okay, so this is another, I think it's a great question. Is there any value in working with clients and helping them reinvent themselves within their current context? Okay. The chapter painted a bit of a bleak outcome of the future workforce. It seems they highlighted the fact that these issues we face are only going to get worse as time goes on. As the new workforce changes, the book talked very little about how we can change with it. It might seem like a silly or oversimplification, but in the newer version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I loved how Charlie Bucket's dad became the maintenance man for the robot that replaced him on the assembly line. He now fixes the robot that took his job from him putting toothpaste caps on the toothpaste tubes. The chapter did not cover this much in the ever-evolving workforce. How are people reinventing themselves within their context? Or are they just moving on to a new job? This is a great question. This is one I'll end with. I just saw an article. I'll try and post if I can find it again. And it was about how people in the current modern day workforce are actually sabotaging robots because there's such a fear of them taking over their jobs. I thought that was interesting. I'll post that if I can find it again. I hosted a panel discussion on Friday at my university, and one of the questions was about machine learning, was about artificial intelligence, so forth, respective to the financial engineering field. And one of the panelists responded and said, it's not a question of if AI and machine learning are going to take over. The question is, how are we going to participate, right? We know what's going to happen. The question is not, are we going to just get out of the way? But the question really should be, how are we going to participate? And I think that's a question we need to look at, is how are we going to participate to the new normal? Because what was normal 5 years ago will not be the same, will not be the norm 5 years from now. So we know that all of that is going to change. So I love the example of becoming the maintenance man for the robot that replaced him. I don't know that necessarily that would be the case. I mean, I don't know that I can really get counseling help from a robot. I mean, there's going to be smart AI out there, but not in the same way from an empathy standpoint that, if I'm sitting down with you, that you can offer to me, right? So that's something there. I think the other component, and I'm going to butcher her last name. I'm going to say it this way. Wisniewski, so Dr. Amy Wisniewski, she's a professor at the Yale School of Management. She's written a lot on this idea of job crafting, okay? And I think this is kind of answering your question in a little bit of a way. But it's this idea of we're given certain jobs to do, and we have now the opportunity to craft the job that we've been given, to think about it differently, right? And I think in doing so, we get to be strategic, we get to be creative, we get to think about work in a little bit of a different way. And I think in doing that, we get to then prove to our employers that we are not disposable. We have opportunities to do things that fit our strengths, fit our abilities, and yet still accomplish the tasks that have been given to us. And I think in doing so, we can then prove that a human doing this work is potentially more valuable and effective than a robot doing this work. So I don't think we should just simply give up, throw a talent, and move on to the next job. I think we need to be strategic. We need to pay attention to what's happening, and we do need to adapt, and we do need to ask ourselves, how will we be involved in the changing workforce? Great questions. Thank you.